Welcome to the Roots and Branches JJC Alumni Podcast. As the nation's first community college, JJC has played a key role in shaping America's higher education system. Our rich and beautiful history reaches more than a century into the past, forever connecting generations of alumni. I'm Jen Davis, Annual Giving and Alumni Relations Manager, and I will be your host. In each episode, we'll sit down with different alumni to uncover their most cherished memories, hear their inspiring tales, and get their hard-earned wisdom for future wolves. So, if you're ready, let's dive into the roots of our rich history and branch out into the stories that define us on this episode of the Roots and Branches JJC Alumni Podcast. Welcome, everyone, to episode 4 of the Roots and Branches JJC Alumni Podcast. Now, the timing of this episode falling in December and around the holidays is actually quite perfect because in addition to talking about all things JJC and entrepreneurship in our community, we're also going to get to talk about wine. In case you didn't know, Joliet has a long history of winemaking and entrepreneurship, and today we're lucky enough to hear from 2 alumni who are a part of that history. First, help me welcome Damon Zunich, JJC alum and co-owner of Bishop's Hill Winery in Joliet, Illinois. Damon, thank you so much for being here today.
And Jen, I'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here today and talk about wine and the great things that we experience with wine.
Love it. Thank you so much. Next, we have Michelle Xydakis, JJC alum and owner of Montage Wine Bar and Spirits in Morris, Illinois. Michelle, we are so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So before we dive into the fun of entrepreneurship and wine, let's first talk a little bit about how the 2 of you got to JJC in the first place. Now, Damon, I'm going to call on you because you actually come from a line of JJC alumni, right?
Yes, I do. There are 8 kids in our family, and I can say 7 out of 8 went to JJC, maybe even 8 out of 8, but 5 out of 8 got their associate's degree from Joliet. And I could say the other 3 were able to take advantage of numerous JJC programs to advance their career.
Fantastic. And so is that what encouraged you to come here? Is just following in those shoes?
Part of it was easy. I knew that instructors were good. The ability to save a little money, yet get a quality education for those first 2 years before transferring away to a 4-year school was tantamount. And it gave me the opportunity to work and participate in sports too.
Now, Michelle, you were kind of already starting your career when you decided to come to JJC, right?
Yeah, I was kind of at the beginning, right? In high school, I always wanted to be in law enforcement. So it was a natural decision for me to go to JJC just because the Joliet Police Department did a tuition reimbursement. So I kind of fell into everything very organically. Plus, I lived in Joliet at the time. So, of course, it was like my backyard.
Yeah, that worked out well. Now, Damon, you said you still have a lot of great memories from your time here. What are some of your favorite from when you walked the halls at JJC?
There were a couple things that I loved about JJC. One, the quality of instructor that we had. I had numerous really good teachers, a couple in particular. If you could say you could enjoy calculus, I enjoyed my calculus classes with Gil Nickel, and business law. I sat for the CPA later, and I took one class in business law by Lloyd Tinkle. Great instructor, and I never took another biz law class again, yet I still passed that portion of the CPA real easily. One other cool thing about JJC was participating in sports. I was on the track team our sophomore year. We had the chance to go train down at Florida State University during spring break and work with the guys from Florida State, hang out there, swim in alligator, I should say swim, but canoe in alligator-infested waters, and watching one of our fellow students fall out of a boat and retrieve them during that time was quite exhilarating. So there's a lot more things I could talk about, but those are a couple of the really memorable ones.
Yeah, I know you've told me before how much you enjoyed being a student athlete here, and I'm sure you're happy to know that both our cross country and track teams are running nationally now, where we've got really strong running programs. And so just think it's fun to hear about the time when you were here and running in that same place. So thank you for sharing that. Michelle, I'm going to call on you now because there's a funny little story that actually got quite a few laughs when your Roots and Branches video was aired at our State of the College. You talked about something really specific that you learned here at JJC that's been a part of your life since then, and you pay a lot of tribute to JJC for it. Can you tell us the handshake story?
Yes, I've gotten so much. There's like people commenting that they can't wait to shake my hand. I'm like, whoa. I was like, this is a lot of pressure. I don't know. I don't know. Should I have told the story? But no, it was great. I think it was my first. I think it was law enforcement 101. It was Frank Alberico was our professor at the time, and he was just kind of that like hands-on professor, which kept your interest and told his stories. And he was a former police officer. And he just was really one of those, and I guess you would call them soft skills, which I've done some soft skills things for the high school, like talk to the students about those. And his biggest thing was a handshake. Like you look people in the eye and you give like I don't even know what to say now, a hard handshake, but it's just something that's very firm and it just shows you're paying attention, you're engaging, and you respect the person you're speaking with. And I think that was like tied into the whole law enforcement thing with being a police officer and just, showing that level of respect. So I tell this story and it does definitely, I mean, I've gotten a lot of people say, like, you got a great handshake. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah, it was a memorable part of your video. So I really love that. Those little things that we take from here that carry on for so long and actually make stories. And so the two of you had a great time at JJC, came here for different reasons, got your degrees and went on. Now, Damon, you did not finish your educational career here at JJC. You ended up transferring on to Northern Illinois University, correct?
Yes, I did. As soon as I got done with JJC, I said, with the associate's degree, I was able to transfer in as a junior at NIU and not waste any time on extraneous courses. I was able to focus right in on finance and accounting. Got done in 2 years, so 4 years total, partly because of that associate's degree. And I should say mainly because of that associate's degree, but got a degree in finance and then went on to get my CPA.
Michelle, after JJC, what was your next step?
So I transferred to Lewis University, which I have family roots to, and enjoyed. Definitely, I had the foundation from Joliet Junior College. And I will say that I wasn't a huge, like a big studious person, but I turned into that. So I can credit part of that to JJC and was excited to follow through with Lewis and get my degree just because my grandfather was a part of the program there.
Yeah, the two of you both, though, where you sort of ended when you got your degrees, isn't exactly, you didn't end up where you thought you were going to as entrepreneurs in the community and working with wine. So, Damon, why don't you go first? Talk to me a little bit. How did you get to being the co-owner of Bishop's Hill?
Winemaking in our family goes way, way back. My grandfather worked in the steel industry down at U.S. Steel, and he, along with the different Slovenians, Slovaks, Italians, all would make wine together. They would literally get a carload of grapes from California, divvy it up, and all make wine. We have much of that old equipment at our site right now, but I saw my grandpa doing it, and I think I made my first batch of wine when I was a senior in high school. And then first batch of beer when I was in college. Kind of got away from it for a long time during my prime working years. But back in 2005, we decided to help another fellow winemaker go pick grapes up in Michigan. And that was our first start. And it just kind of drew me back into winemaking. And each year we started making more and more and more. And then in around 2010, an ex-buddy of mine, or an ex-military close buddy of mine, he flew F-18s, and he was part of the winemaking group whose family was from the Napa area. And he said, if we're going to get better, we got to start buying California grapes. So that was 2010, 2011. And then we just started expanding, and we started doing some blind taste testing with at different venues. About 2015, we said, we think we can make a go of this. And 2016 or so, we saw the former Joliet Diocesan headquarters listed for sale, and we approached the diocese about it and negotiated a deal. We looked at that castle and looked at that castle and looked at it and said, this would be an ideal tasting room. And then we discovered the old brewery on site, and we said, a lot of history here. And we said, you know what, we're going to do it right here in Joliet. And since that time, we've gone on and won some major competitions out in California with our wine. Our Petit Verdot won Best in Class. That's like the highest award you could get at North America's largest wine competition.
That's fantastic. A lot of people don't really know that Joliet has this beautiful castle, and they don't always know that that beautiful castle is home to Bishop's Hill. And so if you saw our promo for this podcast, we're actually sitting outside of it. But it was pretty great that you decided then after all of that to come back to the community to start that business, because you have a lot of roots here. And has that helped your business, like being sort of your family rooted in the Joliet area?
Definitely. It definitely helped. One, all the other fellow winemakers. It's their grandkids that are still locally here. They get to enjoy it. But we also did it because we like that building. We like Joliet. We like the history of Joliet. We like the architecture of Joliet. And I'm going to say roughly 70% of the people that come to Bishop's Hill are from outside of Joliet because they like to share in that history, the architecture, the view, and, of course, the wine.
Of course. And Michelle, you've got a lot of people who come from way outside of Morris, Illinois to visit your fantastic establishment, Montage Wine Bar and Spirit. So before we talk a little bit about the business, just give a little summary. How did you get from, your previous career to now being the owner of this fantastic business?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a long journey. Like when I recently just did something and I was like, how do I sum this up into 2 sentences? And that was for another project. But for this, like when I went into law enforcement, I think I'm just overall, I love people. I love community. I was passionate, and I still love Joliet. I live in Morris now, but I'm passionate about here. And just like the history, which Damon was talking about, like, a building really does like it kind of makes a vibe for a lot of different things. And I think getting into, I loved wine. So when I started, was at home at that point. I decided that I wasn't going to be a police officer. I had 2 kids and I decided to go back to work. And at that point, there was a little wine shop in Morris. So I was like, well, I love people and I can sell wine. So I told the owner at the time, because I wasn't the original owner, that she should hire me because I'll make her business more money. And I was pretty aggressive. I'm an aggressive person, but I just know what I like. And I know if I'm passionate about something that I can succeed at it. So I kind of just walked in as an employee and then just saw a lot of potential. Started to fall in love with the community, fall in love with the product. Of course, always loving wine, but you get introduced to so many different ones. And you learn so much about wine when you're diving deep into it. Like all the different varietals. I feel like I hear a new varietal every week that I just don't know any of it. I'm like, what is this word? I can't pronounce it, but that's cool. I'm just going to pretend, because a lot of people on the outside, I'm sure Damon gets this too. They assume we know everything about everything. I know. And, and he's like, he knows more like the background, like smart stuff probably about wine. And I just love the feel of it, like just the elegance in a bottle, but at the same time, knowing that it's just made by people that are just like hanging out, drinking wine. It's fancy to other people, but it's like farmers, I think, when it comes down to it. So falling in love with the business in general, at that point, I started to manage. And then my boss at the time, she was thinking about partnering. And I'm like, well, I mean, obviously it should be me. And she didn't even know I'd be interested, because technically life pivots, changes, does all the different moves that just bring you to where you are. And she didn't think that I probably even wanted that. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing all this work. I'm like living my best life. Like I might as well do it. So at that point, I bought her out. Was it 2 years after that? And then we were in a 1,000 square foot place, and I renovated a place across the street that was 3,000 square foot, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and you've really taken it and run. I mean, you guys are doing so many great things that I'll let you have the opportunity to talk about. But, Damon mentioned some of the fantastic awards and experiences that Bishop's Hill is now getting. But I want to talk about the fact that you, Montage, got to be on Destination Chicago, right? When was that?
Yeah. That was a couple of years ago. So we did, somebody reached out to me and did some phone interviews, and they asked me if we wanted to be featured. And it's a really cool show. You can look it up. We were on CBS. So I was like, oh, okay. All right. I was a little nervous. I think you doing this podcast seems so easy. Like when I think back to like being with a camera in front of you and you're really trying to say like who you are and what you do. And it's almost like, who am I and what do I do? I can't even do it when there's a camera in front of my face. But yeah, we definitely get some nice accolades and people have shown support. And that's basically why I've grown. I never really wanted to be what you would consider a restaurateur, entrepreneur in general. It was just like the people talk and I listen and I just see the need for it and opportunity. And I think that's really just, I'm a doer. I'm going to go in and
No, yes,
get it
you
done.
are. I mean, the two of you are now very successful entrepreneurs. Even if that wasn't what you set out to do when you were just students here at JJC, that's where the two of you have ended up. And I've been lucky enough in my role here even to stay connected with the two of you by having different events at your establishments or just frequenting them in my personal time because I also love wine. And I know that the two of you are just so passionate when you talk about your businesses. And so I want to know a little bit like, what do you think are your favorite parts about owning a business? Like, Damon, I'm going to start with you. Every time we've had a wine event there for alumni, you don't just come in and say hello real quick. You're like, do you want a tour? Can I tell you about this building? What can I do? You're just so passionate. So tell me what it is that you love most about owning a business in the community.
I've thought about that. And I think one of the neatest things is sharing that experience with people that come in, hearing their story, hearing what they like, the wines they like, what brings them to Joliet. We try to educate them too about the wines. We talk the history. We talk about the ginkgo trees on the property that came from the World's Fair in 1893. We talk about the history of what was on that property, why they had beer or why they had a brew house there 160 years ago. And it just really, I'll say it's an education process for everybody, but they love it. They love to share that. They love to hear us talk about it. And people do love the tours.
Yes, we do. I love the private tours. It's fantastic. Michelle, what do you think is your favorite part about running your business at Montage? I know you're very involved in your community in Morris, so I know that that's one of the pieces, but what else?
I think it's just the element of experience. Wine brings so many people together. And I think that it's just when people say, like, oh, you own a wine bar, they get so excited. It's a business, but it's more about like the people, like food and wine brings people together. And I think the memories, we just had like a holiday weekend event in Morris, and everybody's like, this is our tradition. So for them, like to talk about montages, like being part of their traditions, all the bridal showers, baby showers, weddings now that we've had. And it's just the backdrop to just a lot of memories, and it'll be history, which I really love that part.
I love that too. But let's keep it real too. I mean, it's hard running a business, super, super hard. Michelle, what do you think is the most difficult part of this gig?
Gosh, there's a few. There's definitely a few. My challenges are definitely what drives me. Like I do love a good challenge and then seeing the end result of like overcoming it. And again, I'll use the word pivoting because that's what we do in business, especially small business all the time. I have a fantastic staff, but staff could be a challenge. Like obviously that's a part-time job. I do have a couple full-timers, which is really nice, but it's a fun job. So I think like having people education, I love the customers that come in and they want the education, but life gets a little bit busier for me. So my challenge, I think now is people wanting me to be here all the time or just assuming I'm here all the time. And it's really hard to do all aspects of the business and still have my game face on here too. There's just a lot that goes on. So all in all, like you go home at night, it could be a crazy day and you just know like you accomplished something. And I think that that's the best part. But there's a lot of peaks and valleys in owning a business for sure.
Sure. Damon, how about you?
A lot of challenging things that you have to work on while you are running a business, running a winery. One of the really challenging things each year is the grape delivery. So you think, oh, they're just going to deliver grapes. No, it's much more than that. You got to coordinate the trucking. You got to coordinate and make sure the trucking is there the morning that they're picking the grapes, because they're picking the grapes at 2 a.m. You got to not just have the truck there ready, but you have to also have all the boxes ready so that they can load into the boxes. And then you got to make sure that trucker is going to deliver on a timely basis. And then you got to coordinate all your workers. There's a lot of logistics just for one little aspect of it. And then once you get those grapes, you got to start processing them and hopefully turning them into a good wine. And I can tell you, just this year, our Petite Syrah, we had our St. Martin's Day event. It's kind of an Eastern European celebration of wine, kind of like the Beaujolais Nouveau. And we had that, and we tried out our Petite Syrah. And based on first taste of our new wine, it's going to be a a really nice wine. But that's the fun part. After all the work you do, you end up making a good wine. So there's a lot of other challenges to running a business. Fortunately, we have a lot of people that want to work at our winery, so that makes it easy from that aspect. But there's a lot of coordinating. There's a lot of prepping for events. Once the people get there for the event, they expect a high level of service, and we try to deliver that too. So,
Well, listen, Damon, if you're ever down like a taster, I mean, you have my email, you have my phone number. Shell, somebody doesn't show up, you need me. You two know who to call. You two know how to. So,
for that.
all right. Well, since we're talking about wine, and I promised that this episode was going to have some discussion about wine. So now, Dame, it's kind of exciting. I've been seeing Bishop's Hill wine on more menus at some of the other different establishments in Joliet and in Minooka, I believe that you've made your way to, Rooted Restaurant. So is that a bigger picture plan for Bishop's Hill? Would you like to see your wine in more locations, or is that a challenge?
No, that's part of our goal is you'll be able to buy it at Bishop's Hill. Of course, we want to bring people to the castle, and they love coming there and enjoying it. But we also want to make sure people have it at some of the restaurants where it's easy to get to. So, yeah, we have it in a number of locations in Joliet, everywhere from Fritz's to Magpies to the Croatian Club to out in Minooka. We have it at both Cookies and Rooted. We have it at the Historical Museum. There's a few other places in Lockport and in the Joliet area that want it. We're minimal stock right now until we get bottled. We have a lot to bottle. Once we get that bottled, we can expand further. We had one big customer, United Airlines. We can't manage to service them. So once we get big enough, we'll reach out to them again. So
Big goals.
Yeah.
Michelle, I know that you're not necessarily making and bottling your own wines at Montage, but obviously you have become quite an expert on the subject, I would say. I mean, you've had to talk about it a lot. You said that everyone comes to you, and Damon, you said the same thing. Everybody comes to you too, like with all of their wine questions. But I mean, listeners want to know. I would like to know what each of you have as your favorite wine. Michelle, what is your favorite wine? If someone were to come into Montage and say, I'll take a glass of your favorite, what would you serve them?
I would probably go with our Bordeaux blend. I change my menu quite often. So when people ask me that question, I'm thinking, okay, where am I at right now with the menu? But I'm definitely a dry red drinker. And I always say, like, because people come in and I think that, like, I can talk again with experience about wine with people, and they just get excited when I'm excited about stuff, like especially certain wines. And even people, like, when they start, they're like, oh, I'm a sweet drinker, or they feel like down on themselves. So I'm like, listen, everybody's got to start somewhere. And I was like, and you drink what you like, you pay for it. I was like, so drink whatever you like. If you want to put an ice cube in there, go right ahead. Because I mean, it could be different for, each person that you talk to. But yeah, when they do talk to me and they're like, I can't do that yet. And I'm like, well, my palate is definitely very seasoned. I was like, you get there, you just got to open your heart. You got to open your heart to the reds. But yeah, Bordeaux blend is probably like my go-to. I tend to like Spanish wines. I always say that. And then I think to myself, I don't drink that on the regular because I usually drink. It's so funny. People think my house is loaded with wine, but it's really, I just take home what's going to go bad and the bar at Montage. And I'm like, nah, I'll drink that. I'll take one for the team.
Again, you have trouble with those, you know who to call. Damon, I know you're going to pick what your favorite wine is probably that you make, and I think that's a great choice. But what is your favorite Bishop's Hill wine?
Right now, I think my favorite Bishop's Hill wine is our 2019 Cab from the Red Hills. Though I've gone back and forth a few times about our Petite Syrah. Now, having said that, the customer base is what's important. When I say that, the customer selection, when people tell me what they like, I realize that's what we have to enter into some of these contests. And a few years ago, over and over, people were coming to me and saying, your Petite Verdot is fantastic. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. We entered it into the North American Wine Show out in California, and it won. But I have particular styles because everybody's palate is a little bit different. But I like a certain wine, and I do like our Cab. But when it came right down to it, when it came to enter it into a competition, I listened to the customers because the customers can be right.
Great answer. Now, I could spend the rest of this episode just talking about wines, and we can continue that maybe after the episode. But I do want to talk about how well both of your businesses are still connecting with JJC in lots of different ways. So, first of all, Damon, since I have you first here, let's talk about all the ways that Bishop's Hill has been trying to partner with JJC. You guys have actually been working very close with our community education department, right?
You are correct about that. I think we've had a couple different types of wine education classes. We have had, I think, the wine tasting class through one of your summer selections. I don't think we've done wine and yoga there for JJC, but one of the things we want to do as we grow is somehow have the fundamentals of winemaking with JJC students. Because it is, when you first start making wine, when you first start the carbonation process or the actual turning sugar into alcohol, and you see it start working, it's like, wow, I'm doing something, I'm making something. And there's a lot of joy to that. So that's one thing. But it's also letting the JJC community, like the foundation, I'm working with them on some events. We're bringing people to Joliet. We're bringing people to see Joliet is quite adept. It's innovative. Joliet's big into education, and we want to grow this area.
Yeah, and we've had 2 separate alumni nights at the castle. And since then, those alumni were, they knew you were there, but maybe they hadn't had a chance to get there. And so now they came to the Wine 101 class. They feel like they're expert drinkers and they wanted to attend more. And I think they've become pretty regular customers. And in the end, that's really one of the best parts of that connection is being able to, well, first of all, and I like to brag that you're an alum when we do the events there. And I think it's just bringing that community connection. How can we help your business? How can you help continue to support JJC, our students, alumni? It's just a really great partnership. And out in Morris, Michelle, our presence out there continues to grow in Grundy County, and we have an alumni event coming up in 2025. How is it 2025 already? Coming up in 2025 at Montage, and we can't wait to connect with you in that way. But you've also told me some other ways that JJC sort of weaves itself in and out of the things that you do on a regular basis. So talk a little bit about the connection that Montage still has with JJC.
So I think a strong connection with that is I hire a lot of like high school into early college kids, and I have a couple employees that are JJC students. So I feel like that is always comes up like in conversation. I definitely like one of them being my nephew, who I'm super proud of, and I talked about him in my Roots and Branches video. But I think that is like I talk to the kids. I think that's like they look at me, which I'm, grateful that I'm a mentor to them. And when kids don't know what they're going to do, I'm like, you have such a solid place to start and figure that out, not necessarily needing to know everything right when you get out of high school. So I think that's probably my strongest connection is just, mentoring kids that are out of high school or still in high school with what their future plans are going to be. And then I do love that JJC's presence in Morris is growing. And I feel like anytime I sit on a community development board, and you guys are probably come up every time we talk. So I think that's like another thing where I feel so connected to it still.
Yeah, and I think there's lots of different ways that JJC is trying to connect more like with business. And I'm not sure how familiar all the listeners are of our entrepreneurial business center that's out of our city center campus, but we actually have a department on campus that anybody in the community or at the college can walk into. And if they want to start their own business, this center now, for no cost to them, will help provide them with all the resources they need to get started. Financially, guidance, creative insight, but EBC has become a huge part of the campus, and it's helping people like you, like Damon, new students who are just graduating, fresh alumni out into the world, help them realize their dream of becoming entrepreneurs. And so it's great that we have you both out there helping advocate for all of that and all the stuff that we are doing for the community. So we hope to continue to connect with all of you. Now, because this is our holiday episode and we're talking about wine and community, I wanted to give you both the opportunity to talk about ways that people who are local can come and enjoy your establishment in the month of December. So, Damon, I don't know, do you have anything special going on at Bishop's Hill?
Yes, we're going to have numerous as the holiday gets closer and closer. We're going to try to introduce some new wines to, again, educate people on the different wines that we make here. I know we're going to have some kind of pre-Christmas discounts for some of the people that come in, and it's a very festive atmosphere. That's one of the things that we like. And a number of people are booking holiday parties right now because of just the feel once you're in there.
Yeah, the castle decorated for the holidays is pretty awesome to say.
Thank you. Yep.
Michelle, how about you at Montage? What can your patrons look forward to in the month of December?
So the month of December is pretty much like, I was thinking I have like events and a lot of them are like they're coming up in the next week or two. And then December, we do a lot of gifts. So a lot of people think that we're just like a bar restaurant, but we also have you can cash and carry as well, which means if you enjoy a certain bottle that's on menu, you could take that home at a discounted price. We make gift baskets and we're pretty festive too. I just ordered another Christmas tree yesterday, Sunday, having the time to do personal things. I'm like, let me just get one more Christmas tree for here, one more Christmas tree for there. So I think that all in all, our events kind of happen right before the holidays. And then it's just like Damon said, holiday parties, big groups, offices. We do a lot of like just different offices and businesses around the area do their get-togethers to celebrate at Montage.
Yeah, Montage is absolutely gorgeous. The holidays, you guys don't miss a single detail in there. And I have purchased some of your baskets before. Your whole staff is just very knowledgeable, very helpful. So, yeah, for the wine lovers in your life, for sure, we've got 2 stops where you can go this season to get the perfect gift. So, I really do thank you both for being here, but I do not end any of these podcasts without giving you both the opportunity to give some advice to our future wolves. And this can be anything from, advice for their experience while they're here to advice on how it's okay to change the direction of your career and follow your dreams. I mean, anything at all. So, Damon, I know that I gave you this question ahead of time and you said that you were kind of excited to have the opportunity to answer it. So, you get to go first. What is your advice to future wolves?
To future wolves, after reflecting and working in many businesses throughout my whole life, one of the things I could say, the advice, I don't like to give advice freely, but it's a learned advice. And I would say, get your associate's degree for one. While you're here at JUCO, participate in many of the activities, whether it's the social activities, whether it's sports. Number 3, work. You're going to work with help stay busy. You work at school, you study hard, you have fun. And then it enables you to do, by incorporating all 3 of those, you're going to be working with people the rest of your life. And the quicker you learn how to work with people, whether it's in the education atmosphere or outside or participating in a social club or a sports, those are things you're going to remember and things that you're going to be able to utilize to benefit your career, working with people. And again, it's all part of the education. It's not just strict education, it's educating people to get better. And I can see the successes, whether it's in my own family, some of my sisters, some of my cousins that all went to JUCO and worked and were involved in everything. It benefited them very well long term. So thank you.
Great advice. Michelle, advice for
Yeah.
future wolves?
So I would say always to be open, like you were saying before, like, when careers change and different, like you think you're going one way and you got to turn to the next, and be okay with that, be open-minded, and then also utilize the resources. And that is just something that right now, I feel like, with everything turning so like social media driven, like communication is important, and having the conversations, asking the questions, and being involved, because you really do. It like opens up doors, communicating with people and just asking them questions, not being afraid to ask those questions or walk into, like you were saying, like to, different things that JJC offers and using those resources.
Absolutely. Great advice also. Well, thank you both so much for being a part of this episode. When I knew I had the opportunity to talk to both of you and your businesses and wine and just the wonderful personalities and energy that you both bring to everything you do. And you've been such cheerleaders for JJC. You're always talking about it, always so proud. I knew I had to get you on an episode, and I'm so happy that I could do that. So Michelle, Damon, thank you both so very much for being here today.
And thank you, Jen.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and us.
Thank you all so much for listening today. From all of us here at JJC, we would like to wish you a very happy holiday season. To learn more about Bishop's Hill Winery and Montage Wine Bar and Spirits, including upcoming events, where to purchase wine and gifts, and to book your next event with them, visit bishopshill.com and montagewinebar.com. If this episode has encouraged you to start your own business, be sure to also visit jjc.edu and under our Community tab, select Small Business Resources. Remember, JJC's Entrepreneur Business Center provides free resources and support for all of our new aspiring entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll meet you all back here in the new year. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Roots and Branches JJC Alumni Podcast. For more episodes, information, foundation events, and ways to give or get involved, visit jjc.edu/alumni.